Kazunari is a high school student whose middle school years were pretty bleak. He wants to leave all of that behind and spend his high school life in peace. One day, he walks to the library with a book in hand, hoping that someday he can have a kind and gentle girlfriend. While there, he notices a girl quietly reading by herself. Her name is Ritsu, and she is exactly the kind of person he hopes to be with. When their eyes meet, Kazunari immediately blushes. As he is absorbed in looking for books, Tagami suddenly calls out to him and asks him to finish their assignment quickly so they can head home. Tagami admits that he is jealous of Kazunari, who is starting to live alone because his parents have moved to another city. He also asks about the boarding house Kazunari will be staying in. Kazunari explains that the previous tenant had some issues and already moved out. Kazunari is not picky. He just wants a fresh start and some freedom. That afternoon, he walks toward his new boarding house. The area is filled with old buildings, giving off a calm and peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, he runs into a strange man who is sticking his head through a hole in a fence. Kazunari panics, but the man notices him and calls out to him by name. Kazunari is confused about how the man knows who he is. Not long after, a police officer shows up and says there has been a report about a suspicious man behaving inappropriately around young children. The man looks confused, but Kazunari points him out anyway. The man denies the accusation, insisting that anyone would be curious enough to peek through a hole in a fence. Strangely, the police officer seems to agree, comparing it to simple human curiosity like playing with a rolling cart or adjusting a chair while sitting. Kazunari cannot believe the officer is thinking that way. The officer then explains that public safety for children has been a growing concern lately. Before the officer becomes more suspicious, the man quickly clarifies that while he may have odd thoughts, he has no interest in children. He casually adds that he would rather spend time sitting around at a train station. He also mentions that he does not intend to bother anyone, although he sometimes ends up drawing attention unintentionally. The officer decides to take him to the station for further questioning. Taking advantage of the situation, Kazunari quietly slips away, even as the strange man continues calling out to him. He runs all the way to the Kawaii boarding house. There he is greeted by a middle-aged woman who invites him inside. Kazunari is still puzzled about how the man knew his name, but he tries to push the whole incident out of his mind. The woman introduces herself as Sumiko, the landlady. She leads Kazunari to his room and apologizes for the building's old appearance. Kazunari does not mind, as he thinks it is actually quite decent. When he steps into the room, he is surprised by how spacious it looks, even though it is supposed to be small. Sumiko then pulls back a curtain, revealing the actual size of the room. Suddenly, the strange man appears behind Kazunari and pats him on the shoulder. Kazunari screams in shock. It turns out that the man named Shizuru lives in the same boarding house. Kazunari finally learns that Shizuru knows his name because Sumiko told him and showed him Kazunari's photo. To make matters worse, Shizuru's room is right next to his, separated only by a thin curtain. Kazunari feels uneasy about living so close to someone like him. Sumiko explains that Kazunari just does not know Shizuru well yet and insists that he is actually a friendly person, even if he can be a bit unusual. She describes him as someone who can be selfless, although he also has some eccentric tendencies. Kazunari, however, feels that Shizuru might be trouble. Shizuru, on the other hand, seems oddly touched by Sumiko's comments. Kazunari begins to think that he should not get involved with people like them. In fact, he even considers that going back to his difficult middle school days might be better than staying there. He decides to refuse the room and plans to stay at a friend's house for the night instead. As he prepares to leave, Kazunari reflects on his dream of having a peaceful high school life and finding a kind and smart girlfriend, but the moment he opens the door, he unexpectedly runs into Ritsu. His face turns red as he sees her standing right in front of him. Sumiko and Shizuru greet Ritsu as she returns home. Kazunari wonders if this is some kind of sign or just a strange coincidence. Sumiko tells Ritsu that Kazunari will be staying at the Kawaii boarding house. Nervously, Kazunari stumbles over his words as he greets her. Shizuru tries to introduce himself again, but Kazunari is not interested. Ritsu calmly introduces herself instead. Sumiko then mentions that Ritsu goes to the same high school as Kazunari. He is shocked to realize that he might end up living under the same roof as the girl he admires. Kazunari then points out that they actually saw each other earlier at the library. Kazunari tried to start a conversation with Ritsu and kept following her, but she suddenly stopped him and pointed out that he had crossed into the women's area. Sumiko explained that the boarding house had clearly separated sections for men and women, and men were not allowed to enter the women's area. She also mentioned that the toilets and bathrooms were separated by gender. Kazunari was surprised to see how strictly these boundaries were maintained at the Kawaii residence. Not long after, Shizuru joined the conversation and made a remark that felt a bit inappropriate. Kazunari thought that someone like Shizuru could be troublesome if left living among the female residents. Sumiko reassured him not to worry, mentioning that there were plenty of precautions in place throughout the building. Shizuru, on the other hand, assumed that Kazunari had accepted the situation and said he would try not to bother him anymore, though his attitude still felt strange. Kazunari clearly did not like it and seemed annoyed. Later, Kazunari called his mother to complain about having a roommate since he had specifically asked to live alone. His mother blamed him for being too picky, reminding him that he was the one who insisted on moving out in the first place. Kazunari argued that she had not shown him enough care. His mother told him to stop complaining, pointing out that the boarding house offered a big discount and even provided breakfast and dinner. She also warned that she would stop sending him money if he kept protesting. After ending the call, Kazunari realized that what his mother said made sense. Even though the building was old, he liked its atmosphere. He then found himself wondering where Ritsu's room was. As he walked toward the women's area, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, Sumiko suddenly called out to him. Feeling awkward, Kazunari quickly explained that he had no intention of peeking. Sumiko simply smiled and invited him to have some tea. She explained that the room they were in served as a shared dining area for all the residents. Kazunari became nervous when Sumiko mentioned Ritsu's name. Shizuru commented that Ritsu was not easy to approach. Sumiko apologized for only giving advice without doing much to help. She explained that Ritsu was her nephew's granddaughter and described her as a kind person, even if she was hard to read. Sumiko hoped Kazunari could become close to her, but also reminded him not to get stuck in a one-sided friendship. After taking a bath, Kazunari noticed Ritsu walking down the hallway while reading a book. As she was about to pass through the common area, she seemed to notice him watching her. Kazunari felt happy just seeing her soft hair and wished he could get closer to her. Suddenly, Shizuru appeared and asked why Kazunari did not have a mattress in his room. Kazunari explained that his parents had not prepared one for him. Shizuru casually suggested sharing a sleeping space since the night was cold, but Kazunari immediately refused. Their conversation turned awkward, and without thinking, Kazunari made an embarrassing remark. At that moment, he realized Ritsu was looking at him with clear discomfort. He tried to explain himself, but things only got worse. Without noticing, he had stepped into the women's area again, and Ritsu reacted by firmly pushing him back out. Kazunari's ideal was to live peacefully and comfortably, but he quickly realized that life at the boarding house was far from that. The next morning, Shizuru acted dramatically, only to be startled when Kazunari suddenly opened the curtain. Shizuru did not expect to have such a sensitive roommate, while Kazunari insisted that he was the one at a disadvantage. Shizuru then asked if Kazunari ever indulged in daydreams, which Kazunari firmly denied. Shizuru found it surprising that Kazunari never imagined situations where someone might show interest in him. Shizuru also noted that Kazunari seemed to be adapting quickly and believed he would soon get along with everyone at the Kawaii residence. Kazunari agreed that getting close to Sumiko seemed easy, but felt that becoming close to Ritsu would be difficult. Ever since the incident, Ritsu avoided making eye contact with him. She even ignored him at school. Kazunari had never seen her smile, and her distant attitude felt overwhelming. Shizuru, however, found Ritsu's intense gaze exciting, comparing it to the feeling he got when talking to Mayumi and Sayaka. Curious, Kazunari asked who they were. Shizuru explained that Mayumi worked as an office employee, while Sayaka was a college student. Shizuru then showed Kazunari a photo of Mayumi. It was instantly captivated. Mayumi really did look charming, and Shizuru started to think that Kazunari's hopes might actually come true. Suddenly, Sumiko asked Shizuru to go buy some fish. Shizuru, in an odd request, asked Sumiko to scold him while giving the order. Sumiko did so bluntly, telling him to go buy the fish in a harsh tone. Unexpectedly, Shizuru seemed delighted by it. Kazunari thought that at least one of his wishes had come true. He was living with the type of woman he liked, even if reality was not quite as ideal as he had imagined. Not long after, he noticed a well-endowed woman drinking by herself. She looked heartbroken, trying to throw away a ring. Her name was Mayumi. She shouted angrily about Kenji, calling him a terrible guy. Kazunari found it surprising that someone would react like that after a breakup. Mayumi kept venting, saying she would remind Kenji of his mistakes someday and expose his embarrassing side. Kazunari wanted to leave, but he could not just ignore her when she seemed to be in danger. He warned her not to stand too close to the edge by the sea. When he finally saw her face clearly, he felt like he had seen her somewhere before. Mayumi looked at Kazunari and assumed he was trying to hit on her, which he quickly denied. She then became upset, thinking that even someone younger was not interested in her. Frustrated, she acted as if she might jump, but Kazunari grabbed her hand to keep her safe. He corrected himself, admitting that she was attractive, but that he simply was not her type. That only made Mayumi more irritated as she misunderstood his words. Kazunari tried to clarify and asked her not to jump to conclusions. Mayumi grew more unstable, but then suddenly said she was hungry and wanted a simple egg and rice meal. She gathered her empty cans but forgot her suitcase. She also mentioned that she wanted Sumiko's cooking. Kazunari picked up her suitcase while taking the cans from her. Mayumi called him a kind person and hugged him playfully. Just as things were getting awkward, Ritsu suddenly appeared and knocked Mayumi on the head. Kazunari was surprised by Ritsu's sudden arrival. Mayumi brushed it off, saying she had only been teasing Kazunari. Ritsu could smell alcohol on her breath and warned Kazunari not to get too close to Mayumi when she was drunk because she tended to act unpredictably. Kazunari thanked Ritsu, but then Mayumi suddenly lost her balance near the stairs. Kazunari worried she might fall on him. Seeing this, Ritsu quickly positioned herself below to catch her, but Mayumi stopped herself, saying she had already suffered enough and did not want to make things worse. Ritsu scolded Mayumi, and in the commotion, Mayumi slipped. Ritsu tried to hold her, but they both ended up falling onto Kazunari. When they finally returned to the boarding house, Sumiko scolded Mayumi for getting drunk carelessly outside and also reminded Ritsu to be more careful. She pointed out that they were lucky Kazunari had been there. Kazunari began to think that Mayumi's photo really did not match her real personality. Mayumi blamed Ritsu for hitting her earlier, while Ritsu nearly retaliated by throwing a dictionary at her. Sumiko raised her voice, telling them to stop arguing. She wondered why Mayumi still acted this way, since she had thought Mayumi might settle down after getting a boyfriend. She also noted that Mayumi's vacation was supposed to last one more day. Mayumi broke into tears and explained that her partner had betrayed her, even though she had trusted him. Sumiko commented that Mayumi seemed to have bad luck when it came to relationships. Shizuru added that, at least this time, it was a slight improvement compared to her past experiences. Annoyed, Mayumi hit Shizuru. They then sat down to eat dinner together, enjoying Sumiko's egg and rice dish. Kazunari found it odd, remembering that Sumiko had earlier told Shizuru to buy fish. Mayumi really enjoyed the meal, and Ritsu felt relieved to see her in better spirits. Meanwhile, Kazunari looked like he was in pain while chewing. Ritsu apologized to him, and Kazunari realized that she was not as indifferent as she seemed. Out of nowhere, Mayumi made a joking remark as a way of apologizing, which caught Kazunari off guard. Ritsu immediately reacted by hitting Mayumi again, stopping her from taking the joke any further. On a day off, Kazunari had breakfast with the residents of the Kawaii boarding house. That day, Sumiko was heading out with her friends. She asked if anyone already had plans for the weekend. Kazunari said he did not have anything going on. Ritsu planned to spend her time reading. Shizuru wanted to withdraw all her savings and dramatically lament being broke, and Mayumi intended to watch horror movies while venting her frustrations about couples going on dates. Before leaving, Sumiko reminded everyone not to do anything strange while she was away, and she firmly prohibited drinking at the boarding house. She even warned that she would raise the rent if anyone caused trouble. Sumiko specifically asked Ritsu to report everything to her, since Ritsu was her nephew's daughter. Kazunari quickly added that he would not take responsibility for his roommate's behavior. Later that day, Kazunari felt bored. He did not have a motorcycle or enough money to go anywhere. Ritsu often spent her time at the library, so he rarely saw her. He asked Shizuru what she was working on, but she simply said it was a secret. Kazunari decided not to push further, which surprised Shizuru, who wondered why he was not more curious. Feeling like he needed something to do, Kazunari listened as Shizuru invited him to play with glycerin, but he declined. Shizuru then suggested he invite Mayumi, convinced she would be interested. Kazunari went to grab a drink and glanced toward Mayumi's room. Suddenly she crawled out in a way that startled him, making him shout in surprise. Mayumi seemed confused that Kazunari did not ask what was wrong, even though she clearly looked distressed. Kazunari told her it would be easier if she acted in a more understandable way, especially since they were in the women's area and he did not want to get into trouble again. Mayumi could not understand why he worried about something so minor. Kazunari admitted he had no idea what was bothering her. He found it strange that she was not enjoying her day off, since weekends were usually when couples spent time together, something she clearly felt she was missing. Mayumi grew more discouraged, saying no man seemed interested in her, and wondering if something was wrong with her. Kazunari became irritated by her rambling and assumed she was acting out of frustration. Mayumi, in turn, was upset that she could not enjoy her holiday. Kazunari mentioned that Shizuru was planning to experiment with glycerin and thought Mayumi might enjoy it. Mayumi doubted it, saying Shizuru would be the only one having fun, and questioned why they should go along with her ideas. She even remarked that someone as eccentric as Shizuru could still take advantage of Kazunari's willingness. Mayumi assumed Kazunari must think she was pathetic. She also pointed out that he had ignored her earlier request for attention, which only made him realize how troublesome she could be. At that moment, Shizuru called him over to look outside. It turned out she was making soap bubbles. They were amazed at how large the bubbles were. Apparently, she had simply mixed glycerin with detergent. Shizuru invited them to join, and Mayumi quickly became enthusiastic again, her mood lifting as she played. Shizuru even managed to create an enormous bubble. Ritsu had just returned and was surprised to see the three of them playing together. Mayumi admired the beauty of the giant bubbles, but one suddenly popped. She grew gloomy again, saying that the beauty and joy had only been temporary. Kazunari became more annoyed hearing her complain. Shizoru suggested they just make more, but Mayumi snapped and lashed out verbally. Instead of being upset, Shizoru thanked her, clearly enjoying the attention in her own unusual way. Kazunari could only conclude that both of them were equally eccentric. Soon, Mayumi was smiling again as they continued playing. Her cheerful expression made her look much more attractive. Suddenly, they noticed Ritsu still standing nearby. Kazunari invited her to join, but she ran off. He wondered if he had said something wrong, especially since it had seemed like a perfect chance to spend time with her. Not long after, Ritsu returned and said she wanted to read her book there. Kazunari felt nervous just being near her. Mayumi commented that Ritsu could be difficult to deal with. Kazunari encouraged Ritsu to join them since there were plenty of bubbles. This time she agreed and began playing with them. Ritsu seemed to enjoy the shimmering bubbles surrounding her. When one suddenly popped and some of the solution reached her mouth, she reacted in surprise. Curious, she stuck out her tongue slightly to check the taste, only to find it bitter. Kazunari quickly looked away, flustered by the moment. Ritsu's face turned red and shyly she asked if they could make more bubbles. Kazunari became even more embarrassed hearing her say that. Mayumi patted his back, teasing that he was making progress, while Shizoru jokingly questioned whether he could still handle himself. Annoyed, Kazunari told Ritsu to ignore the two of them. Realizing her earlier actions had caused the teasing, Ritsu blushed even more. Shizoru and Mayumi quickly ran off, leaving Kazunari alone with Ritsu, who immediately slapped him in frustration. That evening during dinner, Sumiko noticed the mark on Kazunari's face. She asked if he had been doing anything inappropriate. Kazunari could not understand why he was the one being suspected, especially since Shizoru, his roommate, refused to say anything about what had actually happened that day. The next day, Mayumi was hanging out the laundry while Kazunari stood on the terrace. She mentioned that she was not going to hang her underwear outside, even if he kept waiting around. Kazunari felt confused about why Mayumi kept seeing him as a pervert when he was simply waiting for his laundry to finish. Sumiko pointed out that it had been raining a lot lately, so she was sure Kazunari's clothes would often end up piling up. Mayumi teased him, suggesting he clean his room so it would not smell unpleasant. Kazunari told her not to bring up things like that on such a nice sunny day. Mayumi then wondered why Kazunari did not react at all when she joked about those topics. She expected at least some kind of flustered response, but he stayed completely calm. She could not figure out what kind of guy he really was. Not long after, Kazunari's laundry dried and he quickly went to collect it. While thinking about what Mayumi had said earlier, he suddenly noticed something lying in front of him. He thought it looked like a piece of clothing and wondered why it was there and who had dropped it. Slowly, he reached out to pick it up, unsure if it belonged to Mayumi or if it was some kind of trap. Just then, Shizoru showed up and Kazunari nervously asked if there were any police officers nearby. Shizoru had no idea what he was talking about. She picked up the object and revealed that it was actually just a hair tie. Right after that, Mayumi came over and said it was hers. She looked at Shizoru's outfit with curiosity. Shizoru explained that all her clothes were being washed, so she had no choice but to dress that way. Kazunari commented that she seemed to have completely lost her sense of embarrassment.